Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. People always say things work out in the end, and I guess that's true for me too. But damn, getting here was a rough road. My name's Mike, just a regular guy, About 5'6", maybe 155 pounds. Brown hair, blue eyes. At parties, I'm the one standing in the corner, not the life of it. Never really know who to talk to or how to keep them interested. I met Sarah when I was in the army. Got a rare weekend off, one of the last ones at what we jokingly called summer camp for boys. The real name was officer school. Think an officer and a gentleman. The army version. But I'm getting sidetracked. A couple of buddies and I decided to ditch base for the weekend and hit Atlanta. Being young, soon-to-be officers, we went straight to the party scene. Took us a while to find the place since none of us knew the city. But once we did, we jumped right into the nightlife. Started at a sports bar, grabbed some beers, played those arcade games for an hour. Hard to focus with all the girls walking around. But that was the point, right? We didn't expect much, especially with our fresh military haircuts. But we got lucky. Right after leaving the bar, my friend Rob and I literally bumped into two pretty women on the sidewalk. We were arguing about some stupid game when we crashed into them. Rob, being tall, didn't have to try as hard as me to make an impression. The two women were just as distracted. One, Jen, was small, blonde, blue-eyed with a sweet smile. But Sarah had dark red hair, was about my height, and maybe 130 pounds. Her green eyes and amazing legs really got to me. God, I loved summer. Rob and I went with the classic blame them for not paying attention approach. Risky, but it worked. They laughed and fired back at us. We stood there talking and laughing for almost an hour before someone suggested getting a beer somewhere we could sit. Turns out, both Jen and Sarah cut hair at one of those chain salons. They noticed our buzz cuts, and that started us talking about the army and officer school. They teased us about needing to let them fix our hair next time. Long story short, Rob and Jen kept seeing each other when they could, and so did Sarah and I. Sarah was everything I could have realistically wanted in a girlfriend. Gorgeous, smart, paid attention, and fun. She seemed to enjoy sex, though she was a bit shy about what she liked. Oh well, bigger things in life, right? And it wasn't like I was being denied. She didn't seem to mind the time I had to spend training and always seemed happy to see me when I got back. After officer school, I stayed at the same base for more training and spent even more time in the field, plus a lot of boring classroom time. Seriously, those instructors could drone on forever. Anyway, as that training started to wrap up, Sarah and I had to figure out what we were doing. I'd fallen for her, and I thought she felt the same, even though we hadn't said it out loud. I decided to take her out for a nice dinner and tell her how I felt. See if we had a future. We went to a fancy seafood place in Atlanta. That drive from base was killing me. The food was great, the service perfect. We ordered dessert, and I finally got the guts to ask Sarah how she felt. Sarah, I said, we've been seeing each other for a few months now, and it's been amazing. As you know, I'm getting transferred soon, pretty far away. So, I guess I need to know where we stand. I've grown to love you and would love it if you'd consider coming with me. I know it's not Atlanta, but if you feel the same way, maybe it won't matter as much. Oh, Mike, yes, I love you too, she said. And going with you? I'd love nothing more. But, and maybe you've already thought about this, but do you see us getting married eventually? I don't want to pressure you, but I need to know if you see that for us before I pack up my life. Of course, that was fair. Sarah grew up in Atlanta. All her people were there. When I said I loved her, I guess I was assuming marriage down the line if she felt the same. But not everyone thinks that way. Of course, honey, I said. I'm so sorry for not making that clearer. I've never told anyone I loved them before. But yeah, I definitely assume we're headed for marriage if you feel the same. Then it's settled. This is so exciting, she said. Needless to say, we had a great night. A couple of months later, we moved to Kansas, and I was deep in training for a big combat exercise. Sarah found a job easily enough at one of those haircut places. We found a nice apartment, and she made it feel like home with almost no help from me. I got along well with my boss, Captain Harris, and even better with my main sergeant, Sergeant Miller. Sergeant Miller was a tough-looking guy, all muscle and a no-nonsense attitude that demanded respect. Those experienced sergeants are the backbone of the Army, leading soldiers and helping officers. Good ones are worth their weight in gold. And I had a good one. The only real problem I had was with the supply sergeant, Sergeant Jones. Big dude, always in the gym, all upper body, no legs or cardio. He also always seemed to have some excuse to not run during physical training. In the Army, if you're sick or hurt, you still show up for morning roll call but then go to the clinic. Some people abuse this to avoid training they don't like. Sergeant Jones only liked working his upper body, so he was always finding ways to skip running and field exercises. I guess I didn't hide my opinion of him very well, and he made my life difficult whenever he could, which, as the supply guy, was often. We needed anything, we had to go through him. He'd always call me Lieutenant, never sir, which is what disrespectful enlisted guys do to junior officers. Some didn't mean it that way, but Jones definitely did. Sarah and I had been in Kansas for about 2 months when I realized it was obvious we'd get married. We'd pretty much decided before moving. I tried to make the proposal romantic, taking her to the lake for a picnic in the fall. It was a great day, and we made love right there on the blanket. Planning the wedding wasn't hard. My training schedule wouldn't allow us to go back to Atlanta anytime soon. Sarah wanted to get married fast, which I was happy about. Some of the other officers and Sergeant Miller were my groomsmen. We all just wore our dress uniforms. Sarah had Jen come from Atlanta as her maid of honor, and some friends she made at work were her bridesmaids. We got married in late October and had a wonderful weekend in Kansas City. I had to be back for training on Monday, so it was a short honeymoon with promises of a real one after our big training exercise in February. Married life wasn't much different since we were already living together. I've always been pretty easygoing in relationships. Most things just aren't a big deal to me. I was happy to let Sarah make decisions about decorating and our social life. She seemed to enjoy it, so things were good. Our sex life got pretty wild for a few weeks, but then it started to slow down to less than it was before we got married. Also, Sarah really stopped initiating, which was a change. Looking back, that's about when Sarah started treating me differently, subtly. I was always fine with her taking the lead on things, but she started to act. I can only describe it as a lack of respect. I didn't really notice these little things at the time because I was working my ass off to impress the lieutenant colonel, my boss. His opinion mattered a lot for my career. It was during a gunnery exercise in early January that I found out what should have been obvious for at least a month. We ran out of fuel for the heaters in our tent. Guess who was supposed to make sure we had enough? Right. And surprise, surprise, that stellar sergeant wasn't in the field with us. He was back at base with some made-up excuse. Captain Harris told me to go back and get some fuel. Part of me was okay with this because I could stop by our office back at base and call Sarah. Tell her I loved her. But it was also a pain-in-the-ass task. My guys had just finished firing, so I was the logical choice. Took about 30 minutes to get back, and another 10 for my driver and me to find the fuel. But it was locked up. It should have been. I told my driver to find Sergeant Jones, who should have been in the area. He wasn't. So I went to our office in the barracks next door. I heard voices coming from inside. No one should have been there. I quietly walked closer to the door and heard Sergeant Jones and my loving wife, Sarah. Sarah had never been that loud when we made love. But I guess they weren't making love. They were having sex. I listened long enough to hear some of what they were saying. It was the definition of cliché. Both were putting me down, praising his size. For 10 minutes, I stood there. I was hurt. Sure. But more than that, I was embarrassed and furious. I made a couple of quick decisions. First, my short marriage was over. Second, I wasn't going to let this screw up my career, not based on anger. They couldn't be in there much longer, and I wanted to wait to let them know they'd been found out on my own terms. I went back downstairs, and my driver was waiting by the Humvee. He said he hadn't found Sergeant Jones. I decided to have a little fun. I told him I needed a manual from our office and gave him the key. I said I'd look for Jones in the battalion area. He was back in about 10 minutes with a very nervous-looking Sergeant Jones. "Sir," Jones said, "I was in your office. I thought I might find some acetate there. Acetate's used for maps. Did you find what you needed, Sergeant?" I asked. "No, sir. I'll check 3rd Platoon's office." The sergeant major had asked me if we had any. Interesting. He'd never called me sir before. It was always lieutenant. "Well, before you do that, help my driver load up enough fuel for the rest of the week." "Okay?" "Yes, sir." Twice in 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, we were heading back to the training area. My driver never mentioned seeing Sarah in the office. I wondered if she got out, hid, or if I was the only one who didn't know what was going on. I thought about the rest of the week. I hoped I did my job well. If anyone thought otherwise, they didn't say anything. I came to a couple of conclusions. I'd ask for a transfer out of the battalion. I figured the commanders would probably approve it given the circumstances. Military wives cheat sometimes, sure, but usually not with someone in the same unit, and rarely with someone of lower rank. I'd divorce Sarah, of course. I didn't want to miss the big training exercise coming up, though. I talked to the right people using the proper channels. They were more than willing to transfer me to another battalion, but not until after the exercise, and I wasn't supposed to say anything to anyone until the time was right. For all I knew, Sergeant Jones and Sarah kept seeing each other. I was surprised and pleased that after the initial shock, I mostly felt anger, not much hurt. If she could betray me like that, she didn't really matter to me. It was interesting how her attitude at home changed. She treated me almost with disgust, and we obviously didn't have sex anymore. I don't know what I'd do if she tried. I certainly wouldn't, but I didn't have to worry about that because she clearly wasn't interested, which was fine by me. Our training exercise went well. The opposing force kicked our butts as usual, but we learned a lot, and the evaluators said we did better than most other battalions. I even got a coin from them for my platoon's performance in one mission, which was a big deal because no other junior officer got one. My platoon celebrated big time when I told them. Even though it was for me, it was really a team effort. I got Captain Harris to give us a couple of hours off, and we went bowling and drank beers, even in our dirty uniforms. I won't lie, it was kind of satisfying to have the military police serve Sarah with divorce papers when I got back and to see Sergeant Jones get a serious reprimand that basically killed his career. Sarah was, for some reason, shocked and angry. She denied the affair at first, but when I pointed out that it wouldn't do her any good to lie, she calmed down a bit. I explained that it didn't matter anymore and that she was just mad and embarrassed about getting caught. I was past the initial hurt, and my anger had cooled a little. I didn't care about her feelings on the matter. Second, I reminded her that Sergeant Jones was single, so a divorce meant she could be with him. I had a feeling that wouldn't be as exciting in the long run as it seemed now. Anyone who messed with their career like Jones did was bad relationship material, in my opinion. Obviously, the same went for anyone who slept with another soldier's spouse. But like I said, I didn't really care. It was interesting that she seemed to take my words to heart, showing just enough regret while probably making plans for her new life. At the same time, I transferred to another battalion and got lucky enough to work with a great group of soldiers. 6 years later, I was leaving a nice restaurant in North Carolina with my beautiful wife, Lily. We'd just celebrated our 2nd anniversary and found out we were expecting our first kid. Yeah, I met Lily a couple of years after my divorce in Germany. She's tiny, maybe 5'1", with black hair, blue eyes, and an amazing figure. She was and is everything a man could hope for in a wife. Most importantly, loyal. We were up from our base for the weekend and decided to stay in a nice hotel since we had a 4-day weekend. Lily and I, being Starbucks fans, stopped for lattes. It was a beautiful evening, so we sat outside. It was next to a bar, but the noise wasn't too bad. We were enjoying our drinks and each other's company when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned around, and who do you think I saw? Sergeant Jones? Well, he was actually Private First Class Jones by the time he got transferred to another base. From what I'd heard, he and his lovely wife Sarah were having a discussion. Jones looked like he was a bouncer at the bar next to us, and Sarah was standing on the sidewalk next to a beat-up car that was still running, the door open. I couldn't tell what it was about, but Lily could tell I was interested, so I told her who they were. Her eyes went wide. Just then, Jones and Sarah seemed to notice us at the same time. Sarah's eyes lit up, and Jones smiled, but it was one of those fake, unfriendly smiles. They both walked towards us. Jones spoke first. Well, if it isn't the little guy. How are you, Lieutenant? Or should I say Mike? Since I'm not in the army anymore, no reason to pretend to respect someone who can't keep his woman happy. Stop it, Lenny, Sarah said. Lenny, apparently his name, just pushed her aside and focused on Lily. Well, little lady, want to see what a real man is like. That pissed me off, but I tried to stay calm. Mike is more man than you'll ever be and all I'll ever need, Lily said. I don't want to be rude, but clearly there's nothing for us to talk about. So maybe you two should get back to whatever you were doing. That's my girl, I thought. That should give us a chance to leave without a scene, but no such luck. Lenny moved towards Lily, and I'd had enough. I pushed my chair back and punched him in the stomach as he swung and missed me. My quick punch surprised him and knocked the wind out of him. I yelled for Lily to get to the car, and she did. With her getting away and Lenny starting to recover, I landed a few more punches. He was still big, but way too slow to fight back effectively. Finally, he fell in a heap on the sidewalk. Wow, Sarah said. What? I never knew you had that in you. Wish I'd known before. Oh well, so your stud isn't in the army anymore. Huh. No, she said, hanging her head, then started to cry. He got kicked out shortly after we got to the other base. I'm so sorry, Mike. Can you ever forgive me? Why didn't you fight for me the way you just did for that woman? She asked. I thought you were a chicken. Why? Because I let you make decorating decisions and treated you kindly? Sarah, I did that because I saw you enjoyed it. And it just wasn't that important to me. Let me guess, Jones. Sorry. Lenny. Helped you think I was a chicken. Mike. I can see you're with someone now. I have to be honest. My life has been pretty miserable since you divorced me. I just wish I had seen what I had when I had it. At the time, the sex with Lenny just felt more exciting than with you. I let that cloud my judgment and forgot 2 important things. 1. Comparing new, forbidden sex to sex with someone you've been with for a while isn't fair. It's always going to seem more exciting at first. 2. Sex is just one part of a relationship. I learned the hard way it's no more important than the other things that make a relationship great. You always treated me amazingly well. In a way, that contributed to all this because I consciously or subconsciously thought that's how I'd be treated in any relationship. I hadn't let myself get close enough to anyone before you to know how great I had it. I don't suppose that, if I left Lenny, Her question hung in the air for a moment before I could figure out how to answer. I felt sorry for her and wanted to hurt her at the same time, if that makes sense. Sarah, I said, I have to be honest with you. Part of me is very glad you haven't been happy. You see, I never told you, but I heard you and Lenny screwing in our office when you thought I was in the field all those years ago. I heard the things you said to each other, and I could tell you enjoyed doing things with him that you wouldn't do with me. I could maybe understand a one-time mistake, but you kept going back. That was a conscious decision to betray me over and over. In doing so, you showed not just a lack of love, but a lack of respect for me that I could never get past. Finally, the fact that you did things with him that you wouldn't do with me was the ultimate humiliation for me. You might not have meant it that way. You might have just been caught up in the moment and found it more exciting or acceptable. You might have just been selfish and wanted two kinds of sexual relationships. However you thought about it, those actions were as disrespectful and showed as much disdain as you could possibly have shown to me or any man. If the way I treated you somehow made you think I was less than you wanted and not worth your love and respect, then it only makes me happier that we're not together. Anyone worth my love would think and act the exact opposite of you. After a pause, she thought about it and nodded slightly. Let me answer your other question, I continued. I didn't fight for you because you weren't worth fighting for. Lily was and will always be worth fighting for because I'm the center of her world, and she'd do the same for me. As we watched the groaning Lenny, I asked her, hope that guy keeps you happy for long. I turned after asking and walked back to my car and my wife, not really expecting an answer or caring about one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.